Hi friends, welcome into my home again this evening, and happy holidays to all of you. It's an exciting time of year. This is an especially exciting video for me to make. I've been wanting to make a video like this for a long time, and now is finally the time. Because in just a few minutes in this video, I'm about to make a very big announcement about something that you're not going to want to miss if you care anything about foresight and futures thinking. And that's going to lead to an even larger announcement of something even bigger that you're not going to want to miss if you care anything about foresight and futures thinking. But before I do that, I want to just sort of set the stage. Because if you've ever listened to any of my videos, or read any of my articles, or followed TFSX and our work that we do with corporate clients, with businesses, organizations, nonprofits, governments, individuals, and the work that we do in training around the world, then you will know that we believe that foresight and futures thinking is not just for everyone, it's from everyone. And what I mean by that is not just that it comes from the collective, but it's born out of the collective. It is something not to be downloaded into us. It is something, an innate characteristic that is unlocked from within us and from among us. In other words, it is a biological, psychological, and sacred dynamic of all living things, not just humans, all living things. And when we come into collective consciousness, or we press ourselves into greater collective consciousness, which is absolutely a real thing, then we're pressing ourselves into greater futures consciousness. And I could go on and on. You could read so many articles that I've written about this and about natural foresight and holoptic foresight dynamics as a philosophy. And so many philosophers that would point to things like this, like Ibn Arabi and C.S. Peirce and evolutionary love and David Chalmers and consciousness and vibrations and all of that good stuff. And the reason I even mention all of those is because one of the first things I want to say is that if futures thinking and foresight is from us and from all of us as an innate ability, as an evolutionary ability, then it is imperative that we understand that good, robust, and rigorous futures thinking and foresight means that we are challenging unto transformation. This leads to transformational realities. Not every single day of our lives, but all living things transform. They move. Life is about movement and transformation. So futures and foresight can't possibly be then about keeping things the same, about maintaining relevance. It has to be about movement, because life is about movement. And I was watching a video just yesterday where someone was saying that, and they were quoting the Gramsci quote, that we are at the end of one world and the beginning of the next world is struggling to be born, and we find ourselves in the time of monsters. And so if that's the case, then that means that future thinking and foresight is not about going back and trying to fix the world that is passing away, but rather it is in embracing the monsters, because the monsters appear, as my good friend Pablo Reyes would say, the monsters appear when the shift happens. Because as shift is happening, then the monsters appear to let us know the direction we should go. We follow the monsters. Now, I got off track a little bit, but I think that's interesting. But Dougal Hines says it in a different way. That we can tell when the end of one world is at hand and the story that has been unfolding has no future left to it. And it's time for us to understand a different story unfolding that unfolds a future worth living for. And that's where we find ourselves today. So for us to be able to say that we're doing futures thinking and foresight, absolutely at its core means challenging the systems that we're in. Doesn't mean about finding a trend here and applying it to this product, doing this thing. And that doesn't mean that futures thinking and foresight is not for organizations and businesses. But it's imperative that our organizations, business, governments, nonprofits, individuals, societies, countries, we think very differently about where we've come from, where we are, and where we're going. Because we absolutely, no matter where we find ourselves in life right now, have to address the fact that we have dug ourselves into a polycrisis, a permacrisis, I like to say a meta-crisis, because that word meta means moving beyond. And it's a word that ties directly to foresight. It's a crisis of not moving beyond. So the meta-crisis is what is beyond crisis and how do we move out of crisis mind? And Einstein said, you can't move out of crisis mind by trying to apply solutions inside of the problem that we find ourselves in. In other words, here's the box of the problem that we have, the meta-crisis. Here's all the things we tried before. You can't double up on them or exponentialize them. You can't apply the same logics. Our transformation exists outside of the level of consciousness that we've operated from before. That's very important to my announcement, which I think I'm going to make now. On January 21st of 2026, just days from now, we're going to be hosting a special 90-minute webinar called Dive into Alive. And as I just said, this will take place on January 21st at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. So hopefully that's a time that sort of works for everybody on the West Coast, East Coast of the United States, but in different parts of the world as well. I think in Europe, most places will be around 8 p.m. at night, and Asia will probably be at some wacky time, but hopefully you can make it. We'll certainly record this webinar. Now, why are we hosting this webinar, Dive into Alive? What's it all about? Well, it's a lot about what I already spoke about, but it's about challenging the very foundations of foresight and futures thinking to move away from trying to solve for VUCA or TUNA or Bani or any other acronym that really speaks to us responding to a shifting world in a way that we are responding out of fear, resistance, just trying to maintain relevance, trying to find our way back into the light again, so to speak. Now, I know that sounds counterintuitive. Of course you want to do that. But if you've never heard these acronyms that I just used a moment ago, let me explain it to you. VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. TUNA, turbulent, uncertain, novel, ambiguous. Bani, brittle, anxious, non-complex or something like that. And I'm sorry, I don't even remember. But anyway, the point really is this. All of these acronyms are really descriptors of our response to a changing world from the lens of being separate from that shift and change. But that's not the way that the world works. That's not the way that futures works. That's not the way that reality works. Life moves. It was always brittle. It was always volatile. It was always uncertain and ambiguous. And so are you. But we have been taught not to like that by this system that I often like to call the future, which is one linear path. They say, what we have now, we have to try to fix it. It's a good thing. Capitalism and modernity and the patriarchy and nationalism and extraction, certainly you know that all of these things are dying, are dead, and we are shifting into something new. And so that requires that we absolutely shift our mindset, our soul set, and our heart set to be in alignment with reality, the movement of life. And so to point at the world and say, oh my gosh, it's so volatile and uncertain and brittle and complex and scary and turbulent, those are words of fear. And it's understandable if we say wow, we're trying to use foresight and futures thinking to make it less turbulent, less brittle, less anxious, less ambiguous, but we're not. because life always lives in the cracks and the edges and the thresholds and the liminality, which I cheated because I want to tell you that there is another acronym, like we need another acronym like we need a hole in our heads, right? But nonetheless, so that we can move away from those, we created this acronym several years ago in alignment with all the other work we've been doing for the past 15 to 20 years that we call ALIVE, A-L-I-V-E. And this stands for abductive, liminal, interconnected or interdependent, vibrational, and emergent. Now, I'm not going to sit here on this video and tell you what all those mean because you can download our free ebook, the ebook to being alive, and I'm going to give you the link to that below. But I also want you to see the link below to this upcoming webinar, Dive into Alive. So what are we going to be doing at this webinar? We're going to be explaining in greater detail what I just went through. That we need a futures thinking today that is ready to diverge away from the 20th century way of seeing the future, which was how do we make sure that we can move from uncertainty to certainty, from turbulence to smoothness, from brittleness to strength, from volatility to the calm waters, right? That's not the way that life works. We're not going back. The normal bus doesn't come this way anymore. So it's time for us to get more in line with life, for us to be connected to the larger cosmos, which is always shifting and changing, and certainly does not operate by the dead-end constraints of capitalism and extraction and erasure and modernity and patriarchy and settlerism and colonialism. It doesn't operate by those because there's no future in those things. As a matter of fact, this video I was watching the other day talks about all those things, and it says, when they're starting to explode and speed up and exponentialize, that we know that we're at the end of a world because they're certainly trying to hold on because there's no future in them. And it shows that there's no future in them by the fact that they're exploding and speeding up. It's like a star going, supernova. It's coming to its end. That's where we are today. And futures thinking and foresight certainly needs to be there because by its very nature, it's exactly what it does. The future is for all of us, or is for none of us. And this is what Dive into Life is going to be all about. We're going to go through abductive, liminal, interconnected, vibrational, emergent, and I promise you that this is going to change the way that you think about things. If you love foresight and futures thinking, but you're just really convinced about this VUCA, TUNA, Bani way of thinking, I have a present for you. One that I'm still learning myself. What it means to be alive. And I mean that in the sense of abductive, liminal, interconnected, interdependent, vibrational, and emergent. And this totally shifts the lens of how we think about the world. It moves us from the world that is dying to the one that is struggling to be birthed and helps us to embrace the hand of the monsters as they lead us into this beautiful world worth living for, as Dougal Hines says. But the other thing that's going to happen at this 90-minute webinar, and I'm super excited about this, is it's going to introduce us to what is going to happen at an upcoming event that's going to dive even deeper into Alive, but not through teachings and conference, speakers and presentations and workshops, but we're hosting a 3-day event that is immersive, interactive, and just like I said about futures a moment ago, comes from us and from among all of us. And that event is called Alive. And it's going to be happening in Asheville, North Carolina in 2026. The exact dates, you're going to see it below though in the link, is going to be April 23rd through the 25th. Registration's already open. We haven't even officially announced this yet. That takes place in mid-December, just in a few days from now. There'll be a big push, a big announcement. And from that time on, you'll be seeing the Alive event being broadcast everywhere. Now, during this 90-minute webinar, we're not holding a commercial, but we will be talking more about what we're going to be doing at that Alive event so that you can get excited about it, and you might be one of the ones that wants to attend. Only 100 people are going to be invited to our first Alive event or be able to register and attend our first Alive event. We're capping it at 100. So we're gathering 100 people to take abductive, liminal, interconnected, vibrational, and emergence into reality and to form together over 3 days through future readiness, through future empowerment, and through futures consciousness, the new futures that want to emerge. Because there's no one way of knowing. We are looking for 100 people that are approaching futures and foresight and the desire for that world worth living for from so many different perspectives, from indigenous perspectives, from feminist perspectives, from cultural perspectives, from biological perspectives, and the list goes on and on and on. We can't wait to see who will attend this event. I'm sure that many from the futures community are going to want to come to this. But I hope that many outside the futures community who are hearing this for the first time saying, this sounds very exciting. How do I get together with 100 people who want to give birth to the future worth living for, a world worth living for, as Dougal Hine would say, as Sophie Strand would say, as my friend Nora Bateson would say, as Zach Stein would say, as Daniel Schmachtenberger would say, as Benita Roy would say, on and on and on, the list goes on. So I can't wait for you to dive into Alive, where for 90 minutes, we're gonna talk about this and have question and answer. And then we will spend time during that 9 minutes also discussing the upcoming Alive event, immersive event, building event, community event, collective evolutionary event, perception event, feeling, thinking, intuiting, moving event, where over 3 days, we expect to see some pretty amazing things come out. You're gonna be, I hope, ecstatic to hear what's gonna happen during those 3 days, where we're gonna give the 100 people who attend plenty of time to dine together, eat together, talk together, the spaces, the morphic resonance in between, times that we're formally in the room together. But during those times we're in the room together, we're going to be meeting in small groups and shifting and moving, much like a warm data lab would look like. We're going to hear, from outside voices like Bio Kumalafe and Nora Bateson, and I don't want to give it away, but so many others. And it's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be an opportunity for people attending to share on our platform things that they're doing that align with an Alive perspective. So you really want to hear what this Alive perspective is all about, because I'm sure that many of you are already operating from this perspective, and it's time for us to cohere. And as Keely Adler and the friends at Radar would say, get on the front porch together and let this resonate and move. So dive into Alive, January 21st, 2 p.m. Eastern time. And then we're going to be talking all about Alive, intentionally evolving our futures in Asheville, North Carolina, April 23rd through the 25th, 100 people, 3 days, and infinite possibilities. I can't wait to see you on January 21st. And if I don't see you before then, have a happy holidays. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.